Hello, we're back, finally, recapping an amazing January basho. Throw!
Throw the salt, get in the ring. Welcome to the Dohyo.
Hello and welcome back to the Dohyo here on Mr. JWags channel. First of all, an apology. Yes, there was only one quick strike and this episode here has been very, very late. And I'm sorry about that, but things have been very busy. Just got back from London where I ended up spending a week performing one of my favorite new musicals, Shining in Misery, a Stephen King parody musical. It was so much fun and thank you for all of you who came on out and saw it. Ricky, Cyril, Susie, Mark, Dan, all of you awesome people Carly, all of you amazing people who came out and saw the show. Thank you so much. It warms the heart. I mean, the main reason I started doing this channel in the first place was so I could meet other people who were into sumo, and it seems to be working about 6 years in. So again, thank you so much for coming. It was so delightful to be able to meet you in person. All right, let's talk about that January basho. Gotta drop it.
JWags was wrong.
Yes, Aonishiki wins his second consecutive Yusho, winning his Yusho in his Ozeki debut. The 21-year-old Ukrainian once again won with a 12-3 playoff victory. Now, he did not make Yokozuna after this tournament, even though he won 2 tournaments in a row and he is currently at Ozeki. Remember, you have to get 2 Yusho in a row starting at Ozeki, so he wasn't eligible this time, but he will be eligible after the March tournament. Quick sidebar. If Aonishiki does end up winning the Yusho or equivalent in March and getting promoted to Yokozuna, that would make 3 Yokozuna promoted within 8 basho. Now that may seem a little insane, especially because we only had 2 total Yokozuna promotion from the years 2015 to 2024, but there is some precedent here. Now, the last time this happened was in 1986 and 87, right at the very end of the Aonishiki era. Futahagaro, Hokuto Umi, and Onokuni were all promoted between September of 1986 and November of 1987, a span of 8 basho. And a little over a year after the passing of Yokozuna Tamino Umi. If you haven't watched our episode on that, check it out. Between March 1973 and July 1974, the first Kotazakura, Wajima, and Kitano Umi were all promoted to Yokozuna over the course of 9 basho. So although this may feel very exciting and unprecedented, we have in fact precedents for this in modern sumo. Quick sidebar. Now clearly I've been underestimating Aonishiki so far, but that's just simply because we don't normally get wrestlers who are this good this fast. But there are some very good reasons to believe that he could in fact make Yokozuna after the next tournament. First of all, youth. He won't be turning 22 until the day after the March tournament ends, which means he could be getting news of his Yokozuna promotion the same week he turns 22. Incredibly young for a Yokozuna. I mean, we're talking like Takanohana Hakuho level Yokozuna promotion. And the second reason, health. Aonishiki is still very young, and he has been very, very healthy on his way up the Banzuke. Youth does not necessarily equal health, and we will talk about Atamifuji in a minute. And the third reason, Aonishiki has an incredibly unorthodox style in which he has fused his sort of freestyle wrestling days with the Eastern sumo wrestling to create a very unique style of wrestling. And that might make it a little bit harder for the sumo wrestlers who are just a little bit more used to dealing with traditional sumo wrestling. Now, a few reasons why we might have to wait a few tournaments for him to make Yokozuna. I'm still expecting him to do it by the end of the year. But first of all, his rivals are also relatively young. Ono Sato and Hoshoryu are all what I would consider pre-peak, and we still have a bunch of youngsters who are still moving their way up the Banzuke, looking at you, Yoshino Fuji, who may be challenging Aonishiki in the near future. Number 2. size. Now, Aonishiki is over what I like to call like the Haramafuji line. Once you get like over 6 feet and about over 300 pounds, that seems to be the size where we can't just dismiss you with one single errant push. But he still is on the smaller side, relatively speaking, for a sumo wrestler. Now, that might be very helpful in certain ways. Less mass means less stress on the joints, which is where a lot of the injuries tend to happen. But being a smaller wrestler, that means you don't get to use that wonderful, like, Kaisei / Ichi Nojo-esque defense of, well, I'm hurt, but you still have to move me out of the ring. Aonishiki being on the lighter side for a sumo wrestler, if he does end up having a major injury which affects his flexibility, or God forbid his back, we could see his sumo fall apart very quickly. And the third reason, Aonishiki now has a target on his back. When he was coming up, perhaps we had a few matches where they might think, this new guy, I can probably take it a little easy and focus on the match tomorrow. Not anymore. Aonishiki has now firmly entrenched himself in sumo's big three, and I am expecting him by the end of the year to join Hoshoryu and Onosato at Yokozuna. Fun fact, Aonishiki is the very first wrestler to win a Yusho in his Ozeki debut since Hakuho. And fascinatingly enough, that was Hakuho's first Yusho. So yeah, Aonishiki is right now 1 Yusho ahead of Hakuho. So is Aonishiki the next Hakuho? Almost assuredly not. But then again, I have been wrong before. And we will know pretty fast if Aonishiki is able to keep up with Hakuho. Hakuho, in his year of being 21, won 1 Yusho, but in his year of being 22, he won 5. So Aonishiki, get training. And the playoff Jun Yusho goes to Maegashira 4 West Atamifuji, also getting a 12-3, and his 4th Jun Yusho. He also picked up his 3rd Kanto Sho Fighting Spirit prize and his first 2 Kinboshi. Atamifuji looked really, really good in this tournament, and 12-3 is in fact his best tournament in Makuuchi, although I will say he only faced 4 Sanyaku members. But that being said, he beat 3 of them, the 2 Yokozuna and Sekiwake Kirishima. Now, consistency in the top ranks has not necessarily been the calling card of Atamifuji, but he is only 23, and I finally expect him to make his Sanyaku debut in March, replacing Oho at Komusubi. And with Atamifuji's 4th Jun Yusho, he passes Takanosho into 2nd place behind Takayasu on the wrestlers who have won the most Jun Yusho without actually winning a Yusho. And as for the rest of the Sanyaku, well, we had some walking wounded Yokozuna. Clearly not 100%, but they did manage to make it all 15 days. Personally, I wasn't that excited about that. I mean, what's the point of being a Yokozuna if you can't take the occasional tournament off to heal? But I get it, the Emperor was coming, you want to make a good showing. And again, it seems we keep the rock, paper, scissors aspect of our top 3, where Aonishiki can beat Hoshoryu, but not Onosato. And Onosato can beat Aonishiki, but not Hoshoryu. And Hoshoryu can beat Onosato, but not... And you get it. Rock, paper, scissors. And now it's time for Uncle Sumo's Attaboys. Uncle Sumo's Attaboys is a recurring segment where we look at a few of the wrestlers who maybe didn't get all the press, but still deserve a solid attaboy for their basho. First up, Sekiwake Kirishima. He ended up finishing with his 2nd consecutive 11-4 plus Kanto Sho Fighting Spirit prize, his 4th. So if Kirishima manages to get double-digit wins in March, he could be only the 3rd wrestler in modern sumo history to make Ozeki twice the hard way. Next attaboy goes to Maegashira 7 West Fujinokawa, who ended up finishing with a 10-5 at his highest ever rank. I don't know what else I can say about this guy, but I love this guy. He's a little bit smaller, but he seems to have the heart of a man 20 times his size. He goes full out every single time. I love his spirit, and I love watching him fight. I'm not ready to say he's my favorite quite yet, but he's definitely got a special place in the heart of Mr. JWags. And as much as it hurts me to say it, I do think his ceiling, because of his size, will still be lower Sanyaku. Next attaboy goes to Maegashira 12 West Abi. Abi making the comeback. He got a 10-5. Now Abi has not been doing too well recently after getting 2 Make Koshi in a row, but a 10-5 down here at Maegashira 12, that's all good, baby. So we're hoping that Abi can continue this momentum. Hopefully he's over the elbow injuries a bit, and we can see him looking very strong, slightly higher in the Banzuke for March. Maegashira 14 East, Shishi. He got a 9-6, and I'm pretty sure he would have gotten double-digit wins if he hadn't gotten promoted so aggressively down the stretch. So it didn't look pretty, but it was in fact a 9-6, and he did end up beating Komusubi Oho when promoted strongly. So hopefully he can start to live like around that mid Maegashira level. I'm not expecting Sanyaku out of Shishi, but this was definitely a step forward. Attaboy. Maegashira 16 West Osho Umi. He got a 10-5 in only his second Makauchi basho. Now a 10-5 is great, but if we look at what he also did in November, it looks like he's on a bit of a roll. He started in November 1-8 before ending with a 6-match winning streak. And if we can tack that 6-match winning streak onto this 10-5, it looks like Osho Umi is on a bit of a roll heading into March. Attaboy. Maegashira 1 West Yoshinofuji. He finished with an 8-7, but also got a Shukunsho Outstanding Performance Prize and 2 Kinboshi. You see, this sort of like sumo arc was what I was expecting for Aonishiki. Most sumo wrestlers, including the greats, eventually hit up against at least a temporary ceiling before they start getting to be the wrestler they were always intended to be. So while this 8-7 may slow Yoshinofuji down a little bit, I'm not worried at all about his future prospects. I expect him to keep on learning, keep doing well, and I do expect him to make Sanyaku by the end of the year. And Judio 11 East Wakanosho wins his very first Judio championship with a 12-3. Wakanosho fought his way up all the way from Maizumo. He's still only 22, and this is his very first double-digit win tournament ever. Very excited to see what happens next for Wakanosho. Attaboy. Now it's time for our recurring segment, Worried, where we take a look at several wrestlers who did not have a great January, and we discuss whether or not we are worried about their future prospects. First off, I am worried about Maegashira 3 West Hakuno Fuji. Yeah, we are just at a point where, like, the youth is one thing, but the injury history is also a thing. He's only competed in 19 tournaments, and in 4 of them he's had to go Kyujo, and that's not a real great percentage. Especially for a guy we were talking about when he came up as Ochiai. We were talking about him flying through things. We were expecting him to be what Aonishiki ended up actually being. But he just can't seem to stay healthy. If he can make it through a 15-day tournament without adding any new wraps, I'm very willing to revisit this. But right now, I'm a little worried about Hakuno Fuji and his future. Radiator. I am not worried about Komusubi Oho, and I know we've talked about Oho a bunch. And in fact, I recently saw a post online calling Oho the new Shodai, which is a thought experiment we have, in fact, looked over in the past. But I still don't see Shodai when I see Oho. I get it. He's a big guy, he's a little bit ungainly, and he tends to beat the person you want to win the tournament right at the worst possible time. But I still think in terms of the style of wrestling he does and where he is in his career, I see him more as sort of a young Daisho. I see him as a guy who's just going to keep getting incrementally better, and as guys above him start aging out and dropping down the Banzuke, I will see him sort of solidifying himself up in the Banzuke, much as Daisho did when he turned 28-ish. It doesn't look like he's carrying any major chronic injuries at this moment. It just looks like he's very inconsistent, and that is a thing that can be fixed with more experience. So for the moment, still not worried about Oho. And I'm not worried about Maegashira 5 East Tamawashi yet. Now, of course, time is undefeated. We will be without Tamawashi at some point. And it does look like he is slowing down. He got a 5-10 in this tournament. But this 5-10 is going to send him tumbling down the Banzuke probably into double-digit Maegashira, and I would expect him to do much better there in March. He may be slowing down, but I still think we're going to get the rest of the year to cheer on the Iron Man. He still has one more big old man record to beat. It is the oldest person to ever get a Kachikoshi in the Makauchi division, and the next time he achieves a Makekoshi, he'll be the record holder. So I think he's sort of holding on for that, and I think he's got a good chance to do it in March, especially if he's on the lower end of the Maegashira scale. So for the rest of 2026, not too worried, but again, he's over 40. Now let's see who's taking that midnight train to Judio. So this promotion-demotion picture actually seems much clearer than it has in the recent past. It seems like a very clean 3 up, 3 down. So, for our 3 Makuuchi wrestlers going down, Maegashira 17 West Hatsuyama, only 2 wins at the bottom of the Makuuchi Banzuke, he's going down. Maegashira 13 West Tomikaze with only 4 wins, he will be going down to Judio. And Maegashira 15 East Ryuden, I wasn't quite sure about this, but he ended up losing to Koto Weiho on the final day, so that makes me think that Ryuden is going down and Koto Weiho will be coming up. So, the 3 I expect to be coming up, first of all, Judio 1 West Fuji Seiyun with an 11-4. That's going to be an easy promotion up. Next up, as I just mentioned, Koto Weiho. He's at Judio 1 East with an 8-7. Now, sometimes they can hold a wrestler at 8-7, but like I just said, he beat Ryuden on the last day, so that feels like an exchange bout, and he'll be heading up. And last, Judio 3 East Fuji Ryoga. He got a 9-6, and that should put him right at the bottom of Makuuchi. Now, there might be a case for Sadano Umi down at Judio 4, but there really isn't anyone else we can demote without seriously over-demoting someone. So I'm very sure this one's going to be a very clean 3 up, 3 down for March. For a sport that, at least in Japan, seems to be considered largely an old man sport, right now sumo belongs to the youth. Our last non-Yokozuna to win a Yusho over the age of 30 was Tamawashi, and the last time he won a championship was in September of 2022. Things look incredibly bright for the near-term future of sumo, as our big 3 are all 26 or younger, and all of them have won multiple Yusho. And right now, the attention seems to be firmly on, and deservedly so, Aonishiki, who seems to have currently no limit to what he can do on the dohyo. But one thing I have learned in my years of watching sumo is that no one's future is promised, no matter how promising they may be up to this point. Will his unorthodox style help him, or will that plus his slightly smaller, relatively size, keep him at ozeki for a bit? How will his back hold up after years of fighting at a 90-degree angle to the clay? Will he merely be great instead of legendary? And speaking of legendary, we did mention that Aonishiki is currently ahead of Hakuho's Yusho pace. But for me, the real question is how Aonishiki and our 2 Yokozuna will end up comparing to Hakuho in perhaps Hakuho's most impressive feat, avoiding major injury until after he had turned 30. I think that answer, more than any other, will determine the next few years of sumo. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Dohyo. If you have not already, please like, subscribe, and comment. Interaction is how YouTube knows that people love the Dohyo and want to see more of it, right? And of course, a giant thank you to all of our patrons, especially the ones who came out and saw me do a show in London. You all are my favorites. And if you haven't been able to check out the Patreon yet, please do check it out. We will be doing our mid-basho hagakioi for the patrons only. And if you want to get involved with that, come on down. Remember, the more support we get, the more episodes of the Dohyo there will be. Stay tuned to the channel. If the last few basho have been any indication, we are headed for an incredibly exciting year of sumo, and you're not going to miss any of our amazing coverage. So, everyone, stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and I will see you next time on the Dohyo.